Hello folks, Alex here. This is Alex Unabridged, and today for Tag Tuesday I'm doing the Moody Reader Tag. So welcome back to the channel if that is the case. Yes, Tag Tuesday again. So today I'm going to do the Moody Reader Tag, which was originally created by Brittany at Slanted Spines. I will link to Brittany's video in the description as always. I wasn't tagged in this one. This is one of those that I've seen as I've been perusing other people's back catalogue of tag videos. And I've seen this pop up on a couple of channels. Certainly seen it on Michael K. Vaughan's channel and also on Tomb Raider's channel, Nadine's channel. And I like the look of the questions, and it's a relatively easy one in terms of prep for me. So I thought I would give this one a go. So yes, let's crack on with the questions. So number one, do you consider yourself to be a mood reader? Yes, absolutely, I am. It's only recently that I've actually started planning kind of my reading. Only really with me starting the BookTube channel have I actually really started planning what I'm going to read. Ordinarily, it would have been I just picked up whatever I was in the mood for. Which leads to question 2, do you set TBRs and do you stick to them? As I say, I've only been setting them for a couple of months, and so far I have managed to stick to them. You know, it's been difficult, I'm not going to lie, it has been difficult. There's been points where I've been like, oh, but I want to read something else instead. I feel like that. So then I just end up with kind of 2 books on the go. So that's my compromise. Is I still read the thing on the TBR, but I do also have something else on the go on the side as well. So if I'm just not in the mood for the TBR book at that particular night that I'm reading, then I can read something else. But yeah, I am trying to stick to them, and I'm doing that because the whole point of the TBRs for me are for things like the Adventures in Genres project that I'm doing, which is to get me reading stuff that I wouldn't ordinarily read, genres that I wouldn't ordinarily read. And so I do need to do my research on those books and pick the books and stick to the books for that month so that I get through them. And in the same vein, there's stuff where I'm kind of like, right, I really want to read more books by LGBTQIA plus authors. And so again, I need to kind of do the research, pick the books, and actually make sure that I fit one of those in, things like that. So my TBR is usually relatively short in terms of the fixed TBR, and then there's always kind of like a might be read list as well, and just stuff where I kind of go, oh, I fancy that this month, and it's been something that I thought about ages ago, and then it pops up somewhere else, and I've seen it, and my memory's been jogged, and I'll end up picking that up. So as long as I have a mix, I think I can manage with the TBR. As long as I still have the option of kind of having something that is completely a mood read, then the TBR isn't too much of an issue for me. Question number 3: do books affect you emotionally? Does the mood of a book rub off on you? Yeah. I do get affected emotionally by things quite easily, whether it's books, films, music. Not that I'm a massive listener to music, but it does. If kind of I'm quite emotional. Not in terms of that I cry a lot, because I don't. But my mood certainly is affected by books and films, TV, things like that. And it does rub off on me. So if it's something that is particularly happy and fun, then I will definitely feel the effects of that after I've finished reading it and whilst I'm reading it. Likewise, if something is particularly depressing, bleak, things like that can stick with me a little bit. And so that leads us nicely into question 4. When you're feeling sad, what do you read? Or, you know, what do you not read when sad? And yeah, I think that's the main thing for me is that I need to pick carefully sometimes what I read. If I'm sad or depressed, I do have bouts of depression, which usually comes sort of 3, maybe 4 times a year, and I can usually predict when they're going to come. They're largely seasonal, but they can be quite dark. They can be quite bad, and so I do have to be very careful when those are imminent or in in progress, that I don't read the wrong things. So when I'm in one of those, I will tend to read really fun stuff. I'll still read things like horror. I can still read stuff with dark content. It's just it needs to be more fun, more kind of disconnected from our world. It needs to be escapism kind of horror. I can read horror all year round. But likewise, I'll pick some stuff that's just, or sometimes just cozy, just nice and a big hug of a book, things like that. If I'm sad, what I don't read when I'm sad is, as I say, or depressed is anything. I tend not to read as much non-fiction because I think some of the non-fiction that I read can be really depressing, especially if it's about the world at large, which is bad enough most of the time these days in terms of being quite depressing. But yeah, so I do have to be careful about what I read non-fiction wise, and I do. I have DNF'd things before. Like I remember the most recent one. Hello, Dee. The cats come to join me. Do you want to come up? So yeah, as I say, I do DNF things if it's the wrong book for my mood. Like the most recent one, I think, was probably like January last year, so January 2022. I'd started Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright, and was just it was just the wrong time. It was one of my dark periods, and that book was just too dark. It was just way too dark. The tone of it was too dark. So I actually stopped reading that one quite quickly, and waited basically until I was out of that mood of mine, and then went back to it, and I was fine with it after that. I mean, it is a dark book. It's a very dark book, but it's a very good book. The writing in it is beautiful. So yes, that one is definitely a good example of like I cannot read that kind of sort of really dark content when I'm in a dark mood. So next question number 5. Most often, do you use reading to escape, to learn, or to critically reflect? Most often with fiction, it's to escape. It's a complete distraction from the world and life as we know it. Real life stuff. So with fiction, it's usually escapism. Although I think you always learn something, even when you're reading fiction, even if it's really fast-paced, trashy stuff. I think there's always something that you can get from it that is kind of education as well. Something informative. If it's non-fiction, then it's to learn. Generally, it's it's going to be to learn something new, or to be inspired into learning more about something that I already know a bit about, things like that. To critically reflect, not anymore really these days. I think I used to do that more when I was like in my 20s and I was studying, and I was kind of that was a bit more kind of my mindset with reading. But yeah, no, not so much critically reflecting, I would say, these days. But I think all 3 of those come into my reading at some stage. But mostly, I would say it's escapism. Question number 6. What is a book that made you laugh out loud? Most recently, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That definitely had me chuckling. The one that I think made me laugh out loud the most recent, in terms of most recent reads, was Project Hail Mary. I was, there was numerous points in that where I was properly laughing out loud. So yeah, that one's the one I can kind of put my finger on as the most entertaining in terms of laughter that I've had in a long time with a book, actually. What is a book that made you cry, or if you don't cry, one that really moved you? Well, funnily enough, Project Hail Mary also made me cry. I think that's one reason why I love it so much, is because it kind of runs the gamut of emotions for me. And another one that made me cry, fiction-wise, this is from a long time ago, but it is also on my favourite books, and that is The Minotaur Takes a Cigarette Break by Stephen Sherrill. That one definitely made me cry. So in terms of fiction, those are a couple that made me cry. Non-fiction, there's probably been many more that did that. You know, where I've been certainly if it's memoir, something like that, and I've been reading stuff where actually, you know, the person's experience is sad, you know, or something, you know, there's been, you know, elements of loss, grief, etc., that kind of thing in the work, a non-fiction work, then yeah, that can bring me to tears. But it does make it does take quite a bit to make me actually physically cry these days, but I get very close quite often, to be honest. But yeah, it does take quite a bit to actually bring the tears out. Question number 8. What is a book that you didn't know how you felt about it? I honestly can't think of any books that have done that to me. Not within my memory, certainly. I'm sure there have been some at the time that I've finished them. But then, you know, they've inevitably just been ones that I've needed to process a little bit. There are many more plays that do that to me, where I just still don't quite know how I feel about them, that I kind of like them but don't like them at the same time, that I'm very conflicted on them. Most I think, like a lot of the in-your-face theatre stuff, that I love. I love it as kind of, you know, of what it did and what it was, you know, what it still does when you read it. In terms of it's very difficult to read, or certainly even more difficult to watch. But it's not nice. It's often very violent, very graphically violent, and you know, it's got some really dark themes in it, and it presents it in a very brutal way often, but it's affecting, and it does something for me, and so yeah, I'm never quite sure exactly how I feel about it, but it certainly does something emotional. I'll give it that much. A couple that come to mind are Penetrator by Anthony Neilson. That's one where, yeah, it definitely affected me. And The Pitchfork Disney by Philip Ridley as well. That's another one that I still don't really know how I feel about it. So yes, it's far more likely I'm going to have that feeling towards plays than I am towards books, I think, or at least that's been my experience so far. Question number 9. Are you more likely to read on a sunny day or a cloudy day? It doesn't really matter to me, because generally I read at night, and quite late at night often, so it, you know, the weather doesn't tend to make much difference. I do tend to read more in the winter when the nights are darker, you know, because, or like, you know, you get more night, because it's got a whole kind of like, you know, you curl up on the sofa with a blanket, and you know, you don't really want to go outside, and you know, it's a comforting thing. I guess if I was reading in the day, I probably would be more likely to read on a cloudy day, or certainly a rainy day. You know, if it's sunny in the daytime, I'm, you know, especially at a weekend when I do have more time to read in the day, I'm more likely to want to go out and walk if it's sunny. I'm much more likely to actually want to do other things. It's not necessarily to do with mood. It's more to do with practicality of, I use the good weather to get out into the hills. Question number 10. Do you usually set the mood when you read? Things like music, lights, smells, etc. I don't set the mood. It's not like I'm getting ready for kind of a reading date, and I want to kind of properly set the mood. But I do like, as I say, I do like a particular kind of mood, and that is nighttime. Just a lamp on over my shoulder, the rest of the room quite dim. If I'm reading a physical book, I do have music on, and it's usually something very kind of chilled. It'll be something with a decent beat. But it's chilled. It's usually more instrumental, so I'm not distracted by vocals and lyrics. So yeah, stuff like that. Smells. No, I don't really have any preference for smells. So yeah, just kind of, I like things to be kind of cozy, and I can make that. Nighttime tends to be cozy anyway. So yeah. Final question. Question 11. Can you leap from book to book, or do you need buffer time between them? No, I can leap book to book. I do tend to, because I have like a pool of books that I can draw from for what I want to get through that month. If I've finished reading something like utterly depressing, or like super scary and it's shaken me up a little bit, then I will just kind of immediately actually jump into something a bit more light. Likewise, if there's been something that, the opposite way around, if it's been something really light and I'm kind of quite elated, once I've finished reading it, then that's usually a good time to kind of start something that I know might be a little bit harder, because I'm kind of, a little bit kind of tougher and more challenging in terms of tone or content or what have you, because I'm kind of, I'm in a high position, I'm kind of starting it from a good solid happy place. So yeah, no, I don't really need buffer time between stuff. I just kind of keep going. I think the more buffer time I give myself between books, the harder it is for me to start reading the next one, because I get distracted by other things. If I was, for instance, sort of to stop a book, finish a book, and then think, right, well, I'll have a break from books and I'll go and play some games for a bit, it could be like ages before I come back to reading again, because I get distracted by the gaming and I get obsessed with that. So I have to be quite strict with myself that actually I just keep going. But yeah, I can leap from book to book, and quite enjoy doing that, especially now I read a lot more, in terms of different variety. So yes, that is it. That is the questions for the Moody Reader Tag. I won't tag anybody else, because I think this is quite an old tag now. But just to say, if you like the sound of the questions, then do give it a go yourself. But yes, thank you very much for watching. I will be back very soon with more ramblings on all things bookish. But from me, for now, that's ta-ra.